Welcome to Bloom, the place for highly sensitive changemakers to be inspired to step into their power and be the missing link they are waiting for. I am so happy today to introduce you to Wiebke Siebert, who is a German colleague of mine. She lives in Stuttgart, Germany, and she has a very interesting take on HSP leadership, especially for women. And we are going to discuss several things that are very dear to both our hearts. And I'm really excited. So let's dive in. Wiebke, you are an embodiment, empowerment, and purpose coach, which is a mouthful and a huge job to assign to. And of course, they are all interconnected, but I find it very gutsy to put that out there. These really big things that you want to bring into the world, and especially for women. And your slogan is equally powerful: unfold yourself and embody fiercely. And I love that. It is totally up my alley. So Wiebke, I give the word to you now to explain and introduce yourself with anything I might have missed.
Thank you so much, Yola. And first of all, thank you so much for this invitation. I'm so pleased to be here and so excited to have this conversation with you, which is so important. I think that women like you and me, that we share our voices, that we share our ideas, and that we step up and, share our truth. So thank you so much. And I'm very excited about today's conversation. And yeah, thanks as well for this beautiful introduction. Yeah, and I think this already has to do a lot with my own sensitivity, right? That my interests, and I would say that also my abilities, my skills are quite versatile. So I always find it very difficult to just focus on one thing or just do one thing. And what I do love and what I'm very passionate about is to always find connections between different perspectives, different approaches. And that's also why I truly love to bring this embodiment practice or this embodiment approach into my work as a coach as well. So yeah, I mainly work with women, with highly sensitive women. And it was a process, but I feel that I don't know. I just feel that it's part of my mission to share my voice and to support women, highly sensitive women, on their own journey towards empowerment and sovereignty. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. And we can spend time talking about the particular challenges that women face. One of them, because I listened to your last podcast and I really like that. And you talk about that aspect of people pleasing, which I think, I'm not saying that men don't also have that kind of coping with trauma. But I think for women, it is particularly important, and it keeps us often very deeply away from being sovereign and empowered. So I don't think it necessarily always has to do with being highly empathic. It also has to do with the fact of being a woman in our society. So I would love to address that. But for the moment, I would like, because we also were going to talk about leadership, I would really like to explore with you, because I find that is such an important aspect. I would like to have your definition on leadership, and you call it embodied leadership. So I'm very intrigued. Would you like to explain?
Yeah, such a beautiful and important question, and thanks for asking it. Honestly, I have to say that I did a lot of research on leadership these last years. I studied leadership during my studies. I did research on it. So I know about this, let's say, classic definition of leadership and what leadership means. But based on my own experience, I have made so many different experiences where I was kind of questioning our current approaches towards leadership, and where I truly asked myself, how would I like to lead? You know, what are the qualities that I find important when we talk about, let's say, authentic leadership and also effective leadership in the end of the day, right?
Mhm.
So when I talk about embodied leadership, I talk about this approach of leading by starting from within, like bringing yourself into this leading role, or how to say. For me, embodied leadership means that you're not fulfilling a role of being a leader, but that you can truly feel that you're called to be a leader,
Yes.
and that you are truly connected with yourself, that you know yourself, that you practice conscious self-leadership in the first place, and that you are using all of these, how to say, that you're using this deeper awareness of yourself in your role as a leader in the outside as well. So for me, like embodied leadership means that your leadership journey starts within yourself.
Yes, I
And
couldn't
this is the
agree
most
more.
important point for me. Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I love that. I really do, because so many people still confuse leadership with I am the boss
Mhm.
and with some sort of outside source.
Yes.
Um, and that is something that doesn't work for highly sensitive people. Never has, never will. For one, it doesn't work for anybody really, but for us, it works even less. And I wrote down, in the talk that we had as a preparation talk, and I will say this in German now for those who understand German, because we will try and translate it. It's very difficult. So what you just described, Wiebke, is
Mhm.
something you would, in German, you would say, tief in sich hineingelehnt zu sein. And so let's try again, just briefly to explain that what that means. It's that deep connection from the inside out, but it
Yeah.
also suggests that that's where your support is. Because
Mhm.
angelehnt or hineingelehnt means you're actually, relaxing into something. You have something that's holding you back, that is there for you. And I think that German sentence that you used in our talk, and I wrote it down immediately because I loved it so much, explains how much resiliency, how much power, and how much peace you can actually get when you lead from that place. Would you agree?
Yes, totally. And there's this beautiful quote, and I'm not sure if I'm able to name it exactly, but I think it's about, or it's more or less something like soft front and strong back, something like that. I think it's a quote by Joan Halifax.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a quote that inspired me deeply. And on an embodied, or like from an embodied perspective, there's this beautiful exercise where you just feel into your body, you close your eyes, and then from there you slowly lean back, or you bring your awareness to the back of your body. And for me, this practice, like connected to that quote, like it changed my whole perspective on where we can truly find our, like this access to our deeper power. Because I think that especially as a highly sensitive woman, we always feel this pressure to prove ourselves, or especially like it's my experience, and this is what I experience in my coachings with other highly sensitive women as well,
Mm.
that due to our nature and based on our experience in the past, maybe, like we have this urge to prove ourselves and others that we are worth it, that we can do it, that we are powerful, that we are not only sensitive, you know. And I think that if we try to lead from that point, or that standpoint, it will be very difficult, because from that place, like we will always be leading based on our wounds somehow, you know. So like this idea of leaning back, like for me, it is also connected to like being truly rooted in oneself, and to trust, you know. Like when we lean back, we can feel our own support, we feel safe in our own bodies. And I think like this is the starting point for a very different art of leadership, I would say. Knowing that we don't have to prove anything to anyone. Knowing and feeling deeply within ourselves that we are worthy and that our voice is important, so that we can use our voice and share our gifts, not from that, how to say, like not by pressuring, not by forcing anything, but just by being ourselves. And of course, it's a practice. It's an ongoing practice, but this is what I'm really passionate and curious about.
Yeah, that makes two of us. That's why I was so looking forward to this, this interview also, because we both know that journey can be long.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that it is not necessarily an easy journey, because we need to, face things that didn't go well. We need to face things that just out of character or personality might not be that easy for us. And for somebody who is traumatized, who has very issues from very adverse childhood experiences or very early things that you know some of the trauma is not does not come up because somebody's actually trying to hurt us. It just happens out of problems of communication or having been seen, maybe not seen properly. And it makes this going inside and trusting that there is something inside that can actually support me, that this leaning back into myself, maybe that's a good way of translating it, leaning back into my own support and my own power. We tend to look for other people to be in our backs, hold our be our support system, be it our ancestors, be it mentors that we have, which is all fine. But at some point we need to arrive to that still place inside. So the embodiment aspect to me has to do very much with looking at the trauma that you have, because that lives in our body.
Yeah.
And we were going to talk about people pleasing, so maybe that is a good place to start. So over to you, since you're quite an expert in these things.
So you want me to share a little bit more about this connection between being highly sensitive and people pleasing, like all this
Yes.
dynamic?
Yeah, and that aspect of what trauma can do, because people pleasing comes out of traumatic experiences. And it has such a highly bodily aspect, even in the way we you can see that when somebody people pleases, and you watch two people communicate, and you can actually see it in the way they carry their own body. And it is, I think, one of the biggest blockades for women to step into that place of power, or return to that place of power. Maybe let's explore this a bit.
Yeah, it's such an important topic to address. And it is such a delicate dynamic, I would say. And maybe I can start by sharing a little bit about my own experience. And then from there, we can dive in a little bit deeper, because it took me many, many years to understand these patterns, right? Because, of course, it is all working out and manifesting itself in an unconscious way. It's not something we are aware of. That's why it might take many, many years for us to understand all of these patterns and dynamics within ourselves, right? So when I grew up, I used to move a lot with my parents. Like my dad had an international job. He was a manager at an international company. So we used to move a lot. And I grew up living in Singapore and in Spain, for example. So my experience from very early on was to always be the new one, to always be the stranger, right? So that's why for me, like it became so crucial. Like nowadays, I understand that it felt like um, it was important for me to survive, right? To find ways to integrate myself quickly, to be part of the group, to be part of the kindergarten group, or to be part of the class at school, you know? And it became this pattern to always find new ways to integrate. And one pattern that developed was people pleasing, right? And I think that especially highly sensitive people and, well, highly sensitive women, we are very good at observing situations and adapting, right? It's also part of our skill set, you know, it also has, there's also a strength behind that. But of course, I used this pattern unconsciously. So it became like, it was disempowering because I completely disconnected from my own needs and my own truth. And I was just so keen on being part of the group, you know, being seen, being accepted, not being excluded. So that's how I trained myself in people pleasing from very early on. And I think, again, it is so important to highlight that on a nervous system level, like we don't people please because it feels nice or whatever. It's because in that situation, it feels crucial to us, like on a level of survival, like surviving or not surviving. Like for us, like we create this connection between people pleasing and feeling safe, because when I'm part of the group, when I'm being seen, when I'm being acknowledged, my nervous system can relax and then everything is okay, right? So this is the dynamic behind all of that. So I think I became an expert in people pleasing. And it took me many, many years to understand that pattern and to start allowing myself to ask myself, what do I truly want? What is my own truth?
Yeah, who
Like,
am I? Who am I?
am I in the first place? Exactly. And you know, all of this, it sounds so easy, but it is a long process. And I think especially for highly sensitive women, it's a long process to come back to one's own truth, to discover one's own truth, right? And everything that is connected to that, to honor one's own needs and to build that courage and that resilience and this inner safety that it is safe to speak one's truth, you know?
Yeah, I mean, we have centuries and centuries of ingrained information in our genetic codes of women being deeply punished for doing that. You
Yeah,
know, unless, you know, you were fortunate, very fortunate. But even then, it was difficult to actually be, and I'd love to use that word that you have in your slogan, to be fierce. There are some
exactly.
societies, yeah, there's some societies on this planet where that is allowed and wanted, but for the most part in Western society, fierce women, no.
Yeah, exactly. Because a fierce woman is an uncomfortable woman.
Yeah,
A woman
exactly.
who starts to speak her truth can be kind of dangerous or disruptive,
Yeah.
right? This is where I see this huge potential. And this is why I said that it is so important that we allow ourselves to go on that journey.
Mhm.
As you just mentioned, um, I mean, of course, things are changing, and I'm super grateful for that. But we still find these patterns, right?
Well, we
Um,
find them and they're deep in our genetic code. So,
yeah,
you know, you're saying it
yeah,
takes time. So it takes time for us. And I love that word that you used because that has so much to do with the kind of leadership we're talking about, and that is disruptive. If you
yeah,
do not dare to be disruptive, this is not necessarily aggressively, but you cannot change or lead in the world if you're not, don't have that quality.
yeah,
And if that quality is being suppressed,
yeah,
then maybe I was just thinking maybe that's one way why we people please, because that's how we learned again over centuries and centuries. That's how women manipulate. But
hmm,
at least in my case, and I suppose in your case, in the case of many other people, I don't like to manipulate people into something. I
hmm,
would like to actually say quite honestly and straight, look, that's what's going on. And
yeah,
let's address this. But that, you know, hasn't been the most effective. It was actually very dangerous to do that.
yeah. Totally. I totally agree. And what I also like about what you just shared, I think for both of us, it's not about, and I mean, of course, we should also allow ourselves to be angry sometimes, totally. I think it's also super important and a very crucial part of our, let's say, healing and empowerment journey. But like for me, authentic, embodied leadership and fierce leadership as a highly sensitive woman is not about being loud and fighting. It's not about that. Like for
Mm.
me, it's about understanding that we can allow ourselves to be soft, but there's a fierceness in being soft and authentic at the same time,
I love that. I love that.
And we can also have disruptive thoughts in a soft way.
Yes. Yes.
And I
Absolutely.
think this is where we, like your work, my work, this is where we are trying to create bridges that it's not this or that. It's not black or white, right? We
No,
can
it's
be
not,
both.
and sorry, it's not necessarily always male or female. I know many males that are trying or wanting to step out of that aggressive kind of leadership, but they sort of get lost because they also don't have a bridge. They have this very feminine, too soft way, and then they have that other way, and they get sort of stuck,
Yeah,
disorientated on, well, how can I integrate that and still remain in my male power, which is also very important. And that
exactly.
is, part of the work that I also do, because I work in a way almost more with men than with women.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
So
totally. Yeah. And what you just said, right? It's not about this one side or the other side. It's not about the feminine way or the masculine way, right? It's about understanding that there's so much potential in this integration process, right? Yeah.
yes, definitely.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
Well, I'm looking at my questions here and to see if there's anything important we have missed that I was going to ask you. A question that I always find very important. When was the first time that you actually decided that you needed to listen to that small voice inside that said, maybe in your case, I can't go on to people please, or I can no longer go along with that system? I know that you've been through a rough patch, so maybe that has to do with it. I don't know. Would you care to explain? Would that be okay?
Of course, I would love to. Yeah. And when I look back, I have to say that I would say that I had 2 or 3 moments that were like very severe. And I like to call these moments like dark nights of the soul because this is how it felt. It felt quite revolutionary. And I guess you might also know these moments
Yes.
and know what I mean. Um, and first of all, what I want to point out is that looking back now, I understand and I see that this intuitive voice, it has tried to tell me something for a very, very long time. But for most of the time, this other part inside of me was louder and stronger. And I was just trying to to cope in this system. I just tried to go with the structures. So unconsciously, I decided to not listen to that voice, right? And this first moment where I started to realize that I have to listen and that there's no other way for me anymore. I think it was 2014 or 2015. And I remember during that time, I was studying abroad in Spain, in northern Spain, in Bilbao. And it was such a challenging time for me. I was at university there, and I've always been very ambitious, like very hardworking, like this high performance standards, like always pushing myself over my own limits. And I was struggling so much. And I was sitting in this tiny room. I like when I look back, it was like maybe a 10 square meters room. It was dark. I felt so lost in that
Shoebox.
moment. Yes, exactly. And it was a moment where I could feel that my body was somehow, I could not hold that pressure anymore. I couldn't fight anymore. Like I felt that my body started to scramble, or I don't know, like it was this feeling of how to
Breaking
say,
almost. Yeah.
yeah,
Or
like
crumbling. Something
yeah,
being so
things
condensed that it needed to either break or explode.
exactly, and it felt like breaking down somehow. So once I allowed myself to be in that place, this voice could finally be heard, you know,
Mm.
because I allowed myself to stop that constant fight between myself and this outer world and what I thought that I should follow and do and achieve. And it was the first time where I understood that I have to take care of myself, because I started to realize that if I don't care for my own well-being and happiness, nobody else would. And I think one day after this breakdown, I I looked for a yoga studio in Bilbao in Spain, and this is where my journey with yoga and meditation started.
Mhm.
So yeah, this first first dark night of the soul was that moment where I understood that I have to take care of myself
Mm.
and that something has to change. I wasn't sure about what and how, but I just had this feeling like, okay, like I have to
Yeah.
explore a new way of being and being with myself. And from there, like things slowly started to develop, but still it took me many, many years, because still I was trying to find a way in that system. I was still like, after my studies, I continued working in the corporate world. I did research for 2 years, and like I followed different careers, and I was looking for my place the whole time. And I think that a part of me still wanted to find that place in these structures.
Yes.
Maybe
Yes.
because of safety, maybe because my wish to be seen was so big.
Well,
Maybe
it's also big, but because you have something to say. So I
yeah,
think that is an important point,
yeah,
and
as well.
just not framing it as just, as a fear-based thing. It is that we have something to say. That's what makes us leaders. And
Yeah,
that just keeps pushing and pulling
yeah,
at us in it. And sometimes it's a very vague voice inside of us that says, come on, find that fierceness because you need to contribute.
yeah,
And then we go for a long time. And in my case, man, it was a very long time trying to still do it in the system. I love that point.
yeah,
Yeah, because again, we don't have so many templates of, you know, women or highly sensitives that can teach us. And that is one thing that I want to do with this podcast and say, look, there are possibilities. There are people that are doing it. There are people that have done it. So, take courage and find that fierceness.
yeah,
And what I also liked is that when you said that, in a way, you said no one else takes care of me. I think that is not always necessarily true. Because we have parents and friends, unless we're in a very dark night. That happens. um, but I think the point, to your point, is there are certain things that we need to take care of. And it's, I think, the realization of, even if I have support, even if I'm loved, there's certain things I need to look at. And I want to make another point that is very important to me. Not something I need to fix. There's
Mhm.
nothing to fix.
Yeah,
There is something to find.
yeah,
And from that point, to tie it back to what we talked before and start to lean back into that and allow it to grow.
yeah,
With that growing process, many things will dissolve and fall away, or we change them with the support of a coach or a physician or a friend or whatever. But we tend to have it the other way around. If I fix myself enough, then someday that fierceness will be available to me.
yeah,
I don't think that is the case. It's the
yeah,
wrong way around.
yeah,
So I'm
exactly.
sorry I interrupted you, but you said so many beautiful things. So
Yeah, no, it's so important. Thank you so much for your additions. And just to continue there, like, um, I think it is such an important point, like what you just highlight, that we don't like, there's nothing wrong with us. Of course, it might feel that way sometimes, right? But like, this is something I also started to discover more and more, that we are whole, and it is more about understanding how to access this feeling of wholeness,
Yeah.
right? Because, yeah, I think this is the sustainable and healthy way and the healthy perspective. But of course, it is a process as well, because at the beginning, it might feel very different, right? At the beginning, it might feel that there's something wrong with you. And, like, so also this stepping into this new mindset, it's also a process, right? It's something that you understand along the way, I would say. And yeah, also like having a support system is super important, of course. And I mean, we're not here to heal alone. We are human beings, we are social beings, and having social resources available is so, so important.
Mm.
At the same time, like what I discovered for myself, and I don't want to speak for everyone else, but I think a part of me, and today I understand that it is the little child within myself. I have this part, or I had this part that was waiting for someone to save me.
Yeah.
And I do want to address that point without being too, and it's not about judging it. It's just a part living inside of us, and it's natural, it's normal, right? But for me, this was a very crucial part of my self-empowerment journey, to understand that I I experienced pain, yes, but I don't have to suffer. And I'm not a victim of my own reality. I can shape my reality. So, like this change of my attitude towards myself and my possibilities and my reality, it has also been a very, very important part of my journey.
Yes, I think that is
And
one of the most important reframes. Sorry.
no, just go on. Yeah, I just
Yeah,
want.
and that in a way is one of my slogans, is to go from problem to opportunity.
Mhm.
To understand that the high sensitivity is a gift, and
Yeah.
that also, I mean, people, it's maybe tried to say that our wounds are also a gift. I mean, when you're deeply in your wound, that's the last thing you want to hear. But there is something there, and that's what you just said, is to sort of take that and say, I'm not damned to stay there. I'm not damned to stay in that pain for the rest of my life. So there are two things I would still like to address, and we are, sort of running a bit out of time. And I wanted to, leave time for your thoughts as well. So maybe we can do that, in a way rather quickly. We mentioned some things that people might ask, well, how am I going to do that?
Mm.
So, maybe we can briefly talk about what's helpful, or what has helped you or I. And then I would like to spend a little bit of time. I know you're beginning to go back into the business world,
Mm.
which, is something we both share, that desire to bring that also to the business world, because that is one of the places where we can trigger change, deep
Mhm.
change in our society. So over to you.
Well, so I just start with the first part, with the first question. And I think that, like, when I look back, first of all, something that has truly helped me, and it is also something that I always experience in my own trainings with my clients, with my friends. Like, I think that especially for highly sensitive people, highly sensitive women, having a self-practice that fosters our awareness, our deeper self-awareness, I think this is something very crucial. And there are also research studies that show that, especially for highly sensitive people, having an even spiritual practice, it is a very, very important resource for us. So it doesn't have to be a spiritual practice, but what I mean with that is that engaging in practices, it might be yoga, it might be meditation, it might be some other kind of sport. In the end, it doesn't really matter what it is. It might be, like enjoying walks in nature,
Mm.
singing, whatever, but something that feels meaningful and deep, and something that connects us with our essence, I would say, and something that also helps us to cultivate awareness and a deeper consciousness. For me, this is absolutely essential. And I also think that it is something that, like, the more often we practice it, the more it helps us. Like, for me, it is a crucial part of my daily life, and it's also what I teach. And for me, like engaging in meditation, mindfulness practices, self-compassion practices, like this is how my world started to change. It gave me this
Mm.
opportunity to understand all these connections between our thoughts, our emotions, like also building the capacity to regulate our emotions. Like all these things are so essential, especially for us, like for highly sensitive people, understanding how our nervous system works, and learning the tools that help us. And there are so many different tools we can use. It
Mm.
doesn't have to be yoga. We have breathing techniques, we have somatic awareness techniques, somatic mindfulness practices. Like we can do so many different things to regulate ourselves and to cultivate that deeper connection with ourselves. And I think this is so, so important.
Yeah,
And
yeah, to learn that even more than neurotypical people, we need to get rid of unhelpful feeling patterns because they disturb our nervous system even more than neurotypical people, and that we have to really learn to calibrate our energy system,
Mhm.
and not, our energy system and our body, that this connection to feeling and the body is essential. And there are many, many, many different techniques to do that.
Yeah,
So I agree with you there, but I just wanted to emphasize again that how important our bodies are for us, and how deep, when you are in a victim state, how deep you're dissociated from your body.
yeah,
So that, I think we both agree, is the first place to go to, even if it's the place you least want to go to,
yeah,
because you're afraid of it, because
yeah,
it's giving you pain, it's giving you all kinds of symptoms, and it tends to make your life difficult, but it only does that because it wants you to connect with it.
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
I totally agree. And like looking back, like I understood that, especially as a woman, I mean, we are so disconnected from our cyclic nature. Like it's also such a huge topic that I mean, we can't go into the details today, but like there's so much to talk about. And like coming back to our bodies and starting to feel safe in our bodies again. This is where this homecoming journey starts.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
So I totally agree with you. And like by connecting to our bodies, like for me, it was the yoga practice, right?
Mm.
And it was not only about moving my body, it was about using movement, conscious movement, to understand how, in the end of the day, my body tells me about my feelings, my traumas,
Yeah,
my mental patterns, my limitations, my boundaries, my needs. Like our
exactly.
body is
Yeah.
like incredibly powerful and intelligent. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. It's not just about what my one of my dance teachers said, don't just flap your arms. And that was just moving it without any intention and awareness. And she called that flapping,
I
because
love
there's
that.
nothing in that movement. There's nothing, not part of you, of connection to you in that movement. And to practice that is one of the best ways to return to the body.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
I love that, but I want to have 1
Yeah.
minute at least for your business. Sorry to push you here.
No, no worries.
Just to talk just a little bit about why you are in a way beginning to return, at least partially, to the business world?
Yeah. Because I feel called to do so.
I like that.
And for some years, I think it was important for me to, first of all, find my own way and to discover my own truth in order to let's say come back to the corporate world from that new place, you know. And as you already said, I think it is so important to raise the overall awareness about the potential behind being highly sensitive, because I think that the awareness is starting to increase, but still what I observe is that most of the people still connect being sensitive with being weak or with needing a lot of silence and needing a lot of relaxation, you know.
Or being
And
an artist, being an
yeah,
artist.
being an artist, exactly. And you know, yes, these might be parts of who we are, but there's so much more. And I do believe that we as highly sensitive people, highly sensitive women, that we like from a very, how to say, like a very organic and natural place, that we have access to gifts and talents that are very important also for the business world. Like just talking about our empathy, our ability to see things others don't see. Like we sense things, um, like we sense opportunities, we see connections between different topics. Like these are abilities that are so, so powerful. Like our creativity, like our divergent thinking abilities. Like we sometimes we just address topics from a different angle. Like, and yes, this can be disruptive.
Yes, indeed.
And I made these, you know, like this is where I come from. Like I experienced how it hasn't been accepted or how it hasn't been
Welcome. Yeah.
well,
Mm.
it hasn't been welcome
Mm.
exactly. But I do think that it is so important that highly sensitive people are being acknowledged as a potential, as potential leaders.
Yes.
It
Yes, I
is,
couldn't
for
agree
me,
more.
it is a very, very important topic. Yeah.
Yeah, so thank you for that. Thank you for that, because that's another topic we deeply share, that
Yeah.
mission. And as we know, highly sensitives are about sharing. And we also, very consciously, both of us decided to communicate and maybe even at some point co-create. And the temptation is always still there to think, oh, that other person might take something away from
Mm.
the things I want to say, or to go into competition. And because there's so much of that in our society, but we both consciously decided, no, we're going to have fun sharing this and see what comes out of it. So again, that is something that many times still needs to be done consciously with awareness. Say, there's this programming, and am I going to follow it, or am I going to follow my nature, which is to share and to co-create?
Exactly.
Thank you for that.
Thank you so much, Yola. And you know, I think that this is part of, let's say, this new leading paradigm or this new paradigm of working and working together. You know, this is what I want to embody and what I
Mm.
want to encourage people to do, because I think that, you know, we all have our different, how to say, like even if we follow a similar mission, we still are like we're still so unique, and by bringing all of these thoughts and ideas together, like new things can emerge. And yeah, so I really, really enjoy this, yeah, this sharing and this exploring together as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's fun, definitely.
Yeah.
So great. My last question to you is
Mhm.
a question I always ask as a last question. That is, what did I not ask you that you would still like to say because you think it's important?
Hmm. Oh, wow. Okay.
Take your time.
Yeah, let me think about that.
maybe we covered basically everything that was really important, which is also okay. But sometimes something just pops up, maybe in your personal experience or
Yeah.
something you tend to share with your clients that we haven't mentioned.
Yeah, I think something that just comes up right now, it's just one sentence again, and I think somehow we already mentioned it, but I think what I just want to share again, that it is so important to integrate on a deeper level that our stories matter,
Yes, I love
that
that.
our stories matter.
Mm,
There's a power behind our stories, even if there's vulnerability involved, even if there's pain involved, even if there are moments involved where we felt like a failure or whatever. But I think that there's a very unique power in these kind of stories. And I'm so convinced that there's so many people out there who would love to hear more of these stories, to feel empowered by themselves and to see, oh, wow, it is possible to change. It is possible to heal. It is possible to make a difference out there by using my own voice and sharing my own story. And I think this is just something that just came up for me again. And
yeah, but it's
my
perfect.
journey, it's your journey, and it's why we're here.
Yes, it's why we're here, and it's just a perfect summary, I think, of this session also, you know,
Mm.
that it is possible. It is
Yeah,
possible and it is necessary and it is needed.
yeah,
You know, like I always say, we are the voice or we are the people we are waiting for. Um,
exactly.
yeah, so thank
Exactly.
you very much for those words. I think they were very important.
Thank you, Yola. And maybe just to add just last sentence, it's also connected to that because we talked about it. I think there's still role models missing in society, you know, like highly sensitive people who are empowered, who are using their voice. So like if you're listening now, if you're hearing our words, like don't wait for the perfect role model, but allow yourself to become your own role model. Yeah, because I think we do need these people who have the courage to become a role model and to encourage other people. Yeah.
Yes, we need to need to take the narrative back. We need
Yeah.
to take the narrative back and, you know, make use of people that are here to support you
Yeah.
on that journey until you can sort of lean back enough into yourself to lead in whichever area you're called to lead. So I will put into the notes Wiebke's internet site and how you can connect with her so that if you feel called to it, you know, go and work with her because her work is great.
Mm.
And thank you very, very much, Wiebke, for taking the time today to have this conversation. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Yola. Thank you so much for your work and for giving me this chance to be here. And thank you so much for this important conversation here today. Thank you.